I never thought I'd end up here, but honestly, life has a funny way of smacking you in the face when you least expect it. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for about 5 years now. At first, it seemed like we had everything. A nice apartment, good jobs, a plan to grow old together. But lately, I'd started noticing small things. Her phone always on lock, sneaky messages late at night, little lies slipping out that didn't quite add up. And I guess I was stupid to ignore the signs, telling myself I was overthinking, that Lisa wouldn't do something like cheat on me. Still, something felt off and I couldn't shake it. It all started to spiral when my mom died unexpectedly. We were at the funeral and Lisa was her usual bitchy self, condescending, dismissive of everyone around her, acting as if she was too good for the whole event. I remember feeling overwhelmed with grief, trying to hold it together, and she just kept snapping at me, making everything about herself. That day, I noticed her phone kept buzzing, and she'd quickly hide it every time I glanced her way. I brushed it off, told myself she was just being her usual self, but deep down I knew something was up. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. She started canceling plans, claiming work was crazy, but I caught her sneaking off with her phone more often. She lied about where she was going, said she was meeting friends or running errands, but I found out she was meeting her boss, Daniel, from work. It was a shock. I'd never liked him, thought he was a sleazy guy, and now I had proof she was sleeping with him. I found a message thread on her phone, flirty, suggestive, talking about how much they wanted each other, how they'd keep it secret from everyone. My stomach dropped. I read it all, trembling, feeling like I was in a nightmare. Getting the evidence was one thing, but confronting her was another. I remember the moment I decided to do it. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I waited until she got home from work, and as she strutted in, all bitchy attitude and false smile, I snapped. I threw her phone on the table and demanded to know what the hell was going on. Her face twisted. She tried to deny everything, called me crazy, said I was paranoid, that I was accusing her for no reason. She told me I was just jealous and insecure, that Daniel was just a friend, and I was overreacting. But I had the screenshots, the proof that she'd been lying from the start. Still, she kept spinning her web of lies, trying to make me doubt myself, making it about how I was the one who was crazy and insecure. That was the moment I realized I was dealing with a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could cheat and lie her way out of it. The emotional fallout hit me hard. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Mostly I was furious. How dare she do this while I was grieving my mother? How dare she lie and cheat behind my back, knowing how much I loved her? But beneath the anger there was this deep, aching sadness. I'd trusted her, loved her, and she'd played me for a fool. I kept thinking about all the nights I was comforting her about my mom's death, and she was probably with him, having sex, laughing. At how gullible I was. I wondered how long this had been going on, how many times she'd fooled me, and how I hadn't seen it sooner. The worst part, she tried to turn everything around on me. Said I was desperate for attention, insecure, that she was only playing around, and I just needed to get over it. That night I felt broken. All I wanted was to rip her apart, to scream at her for betraying me, for making me feel like a complete idiot. But I kept it inside because I knew I had to figure out what to do next. I wasn't going to beg her to stay or try to fix a marriage that had already been shattered. I felt like a fool, but I also knew I couldn't keep living in this lie. Betrayal is a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone, especially not when it's someone you loved more than anything. I realized I had a choice: forgive her, move on, or fight for revenge. And honestly, I wasn't sure which path was worse, living with the pain or taking the fight to her. But one thing was clear: this was only the beginning of a long, painful journey. After that confrontation, everything changed. Lisa moved out about a week later, claiming she needed space to think and that she was sorry but not ready to talk. Yeah, right. Sorry doesn't cut it when you've been caught in such a blatant lie, especially one that shattered everything I thought I knew about her. Honestly, I was numb, just going through the motions. The house felt colder, emptier without her bitchy comments and that fake smile she always wore when she was trying to hide something. But even after she left, I couldn't get her out of my head. I kept replaying that night, that moment I found out she'd been cheating on me with her boss. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the fact that she lied so effortlessly that she thought she could get away with it. It made me furious, but it also made me more determined to find out everything. I needed to know just how far she'd gone, how many lies she'd told, and what I was actually dealing with. One night, I decided to do a little digging. I started scrolling through her email, her social media accounts, any digital footprint I could find. I knew it was a risky move, but I couldn't sit around waiting for her to come back or for her to slip up again. That's when I stumbled upon a folder in her email labeled work stuff. At first, I thought it was just routine, but then I saw the folder was hidden, encrypted somehow. That's when I realized she was hiding something. I cracked it open, and what I found made my blood run cold. There were dozens of messages, not just with Daniel, but with other people too. Some were about work, sure, but most of them were flirty, suggestive, almost like she was playing a game with everyone. Still, Daniel was clearly her main squeeze. The emails were explicit, talking about meetings after hours, plans for late-night business dinners, and even some pretty graphic stuff about what they did when they were alone. I couldn't believe she'd gone so far. She lied about everything, about her meetings, about her friendship with Daniel. And the worst part, she did all this while claiming she was busy with work and overwhelmed with life. Yeah, right. She was out screwing her boss while I was mourning my mother, crying myself to sleep some nights. That's when I realized I had to take control of this mess. I couldn't just sit here and stew in anger. I needed a plan. A way to make her regret what she'd done, to make her understand that I wasn't some fool she could step on. And so I started thinking about revenge. Not some petty, childish revenge, something calculated, something that would hit her where it hurt. I remembered her telling me how much she thought she was smarter than everyone, how she always got her way. Well, I was going to turn that around. I wanted her to see what it felt like to be betrayed, to be lied to be made a fool of. I wanted her to know that I wasn't just some guy who'd take it lying down. I'd been hurt, yes, but I wasn't done fighting. She thought she could walk out, leave me broken and alone, and that was the end of it. But I was already planning my move, figuring out how to make her pay for this. First, I decided to confront her again, but this time differently. I reached out and told her I knew everything. I sent her the screenshots, the emails, everything I'd found. Her response was predictable: denial, deflection, and lots of bullshit about how I was just jealous and insecure. She claimed I was paranoid and crazy, that Daniel was just a mentor and friend, and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. She played the victim, crying that she never meant for it to happen, that she loved me, and that she was confused. But I saw through her lies now. I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish bitch who thought she could get away with anything because she was pretty and charming. That's when I decided that I'd had enough of her lies. It was time to turn the tables. I started gathering more dirt, more proof, planning my next move. I wasn't going to let her walk away clean. I wanted her to see what it felt like to be exposed, to be humiliated, just like she'd humiliated me. I knew I could do it, expose her to her boss, to her friends, to everyone. I wanted her to feel the pain I was feeling 10 times over. That's what revenge was all about for me now. Not just hurting her, but making her understand she couldn't get away with betraying someone who loved her this deeply. And honestly, I was sick of feeling helpless. I'd been broken, furious, betrayed, and now I was ready to fight back. Hard. I didn't know what that would look like exactly, but I knew that I was done being the pathetic, heartbroken husband. If she thought she could cheat, lie, and leave me in the dust, she had another thing coming. I was going to show her that she messed with the wrong guy and that her lies were going to catch up with her. The game was on. After I sent her all the evidence, I expected her to crumble, but Lisa, true to her bitchy, manipulative self, doubled down. She called me obsessively jealous, said I was losing my mind, and accused me of trying to ruin her career and her life. She insisted Daniel was just a mentor, that they never had sex, that I was imagining things. Yeah, right, I could see through her fake tears and her desperate lies. She's the kind of woman who can lie with a straight face, even when it's obvious she's caught in her own web of deceit. The crazy part was, she kept acting like she was the victim, said I was overreacting, that I was just insecure because she was so beautiful and wanted to stay focused on her career. It was all bullshit, of course. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she thought she was smart enough to get away with it. But I wasn't buying her act anymore. Deep down, I was boiling with rage. I knew I had to do something more, something that would make her regret everything she'd thrown away. One day, I decided I'd go to her workplace. I wanted to see her for myself, see what kind of woman she'd become. I wasn't planning to blow my cover or cause a scene, but I needed to know how deep this rabbit hole went. So I showed up unexpectedly, and what I saw made my stomach turn. She was there, laughing and flirting with Daniel, practically glued to him like they were. Some secret couple, they didn't even bother hiding it. They looked at each other with that intimate, knowing gaze like they shared some secret world only they understood. That moment I realized this wasn't just an affair, it was a full-blown betrayal. It wasn't just about sex, it was about her wanting to have her cake and eat it too, and she thought she could keep hiding it forever. I hung back for a while, watching from a distance, feeling a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she pretend to be the loving wife, the caring partner, when she was out screwing her boss behind my back? The worst part was, I could see her enjoying it, relishing her little secret. That image burned into my mind, her flirtatious smirk, her touch on his arm, her laugh that was so fake in front of me but so real when she was with him. It was like watching her become someone I didn't even recognize. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, but I held my composure. I just knew that I needed to get some more proof, something concrete that I could use to end this once and for all. Later that night, I went home and started digging even deeper. I hacked into her phone, her email, her social media accounts more thoroughly. I found messages, more than I thought I'd ever see, talking about their plans, their sex, their secret weekends. She even joked about how she was going to leave everything behind and run away with Daniel if I ever found out. That was the moment I realized she'd planned this betrayal for a long time. She didn't just cheat on me, she was actively orchestrating her escape route. I felt like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, but I knew I had to stay rational. I sat down and started making a list. All the evidence, all the lies she'd told, all the ways she'd manipulated my trust. I started planning my next move, something brutal but calculated. I didn't want to just walk away and be done. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused. I wanted her to see that you can't just throw away a marriage like it's nothing, that cheating and lying have consequences. I wanted her to understand she'd messed with the wrong guy and I was going to make sure she paid. The more I uncovered, the more clarity I gained. I knew I had to confront her again, this time with everything laid bare. I waited for her to come home that night, tense but ready. When she finally showed up, I pulled out all my evidence, screenshots, recordings, her own words. Her face twisted in anger and disbelief. She tried to deny everything, but it was too late. I had her dead to rights. She looked at me and spat. "You're just insecure and jealous. You're ruining everything because you're scared of losing me." That was the final straw. I told her she could keep lying, but it wouldn't change the truth. She'd been caught red-handed and it was over. That confrontation marked a turning point. I knew I couldn't fix what she'd broken, not with words anyway. The betrayal ran too deep, and I was exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. I wasn't interested in fighting for a marriage that was already dead in the water. But I also didn't want to just let her walk away, smiling and pretending she'd done nothing. Wrong, I needed to send a message to her, to Daniel, to everyone. I wanted her to realize she couldn't treat people like this and get away with it. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious, and I was figuring out how to turn that fury into justice. After that night, I knew I had to act fast. I wasn't going to let her keep lying, keep hiding behind her manipulative bullshit. I sat down, took a deep breath, and started drafting my plan. My goal wasn't just to confront her again. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, and I was ready to make her pay. I wasn't just hurt. I was mad as hell, and I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. First, I decided I'd contact her boss, Daniel. I wanted him to know I had all the evidence, that I was aware of their secret. I knew this could blow up his career, but honestly, I didn't care. He was part of the problem, and I wanted to make sure he understood he wasn't just cheating with my wife. He was messing with the wrong guy. I found his email, pulled out some of the most incriminating messages, and sent them to him. I made sure to include a short, clear message. You've been caught. This isn't just about an affair, it's about respect, and I suggest you think carefully about your next move. I didn't want to come across as some crazy, vengeful guy, but I wanted him to realize I was serious. I knew I could ruin him if I wanted to, and that thought made me feel a little better, a little more in control. Next, I reached out to a few of her friends, not to gossip, but to warn them that Lisa wasn't the person they thought she was. She'd been telling everyone she was the victim, that I was jealous and insecure, but I wanted her close friends to know the truth. I sent them screenshots, told them about her lies, and explained that she'd been cheating on me with her boss. I didn't expect them to turn on her immediately, but I wanted them to see the real Lisa, the one hiding behind a mask of charm and bitchiness. Meanwhile, I started thinking about how I was going to handle her moving forward. I knew she'd try to spin everything, make herself look innocent, and blame me for everything. That's why I began documenting everything I could: texts, emails, conversations, just in case I needed to prove to anyone that she was the one who had betrayed us. I also considered consulting a lawyer, just to understand my rights, especially if I needed to pursue a divorce or some kind of separation. Honestly, I was more angry than hurt at this point, but I knew I had to be smart. Throughout all this, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to break down, cry, scream at her when she finally came back to town, but another part was ice cold. I realized that I couldn't let her see weakness. She'd see it as an opportunity to manipulate me even more. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I wasn't going to be a pushover. I started preparing myself mentally for the inevitable confrontation, knowing she'd come back, probably with more lies, more bullshit, trying to smooth things over or maybe even act like the victim again. But I was already one step ahead. I also took a hard look at myself. I thought about what this whole ordeal had revealed about my relationship, about Lisa, and about trusting someone so blindly. I won't pretend I was perfect. I ignored some red flags. I'd been complacent, maybe a little too trusting. But betrayal like this makes you question everything. It made me realize I'd been too comfortable, too naive. From now on, I promised myself I'd be more cautious, more aware. No more turning a blind eye when something doesn't sit right. No more ignoring the signs because I wanted to believe the best. That night, I sat alone in the dark, looking at all the evidence I'd gathered. I knew this was only the beginning, that the fallout would be messy, and that Lisa would fight to keep her lies intact. But I also knew one thing: I was done being a victim. I was going to take control of this mess, and I was going to make damn sure she paid for what she did. She may have thought she could cheat and lie her way out of this, but I was ready to make her regret every single moment she thought she'd won. That's when I realized I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore, I was fighting for my dignity, and I was prepared to win. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I kept everything to myself at first, gathering my strength, preparing for what I knew would be an inevitable showdown. I stayed silent when she called, trying to act like everything was normal, but inside I was already crafting my next moves. I knew she'd come back, probably expecting me to beg or forgive her, thinking she could just brush everything under the rug and go back to pretending everything was fine. But I wasn't interested in that. I had made up my mind. She needed to understand that her lies and betrayal had consequences. When she finally returned to town, I was ready. I saw her walk through the door, all confident and bitchy, trying to act like nothing had happened. But she was met with a different kind of energy this time. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't scream, I simply laid everything out on the table. I pushed her phone and the screenshots toward her. I told her I knew about her affair, about her lies, and about how she'd been screwing her boss behind my back during the funeral, while I was mourning my mother. Her face paled, but she still tried to deny it, to spin some bullshit about how everything was just innocent work conversations, and how I was just jealous and paranoid. I didn't let her get away with it. I calmly told her I had proof, more than enough to ruin her career, her reputation, and her life if I wanted. That's when she snapped, trying to shift the blame onto me, saying I was controlling, insecure, and that I didn't trust her because I was afraid of losing her. Yeah, right. I was past the point of caring what she thought. I told her I didn't want to be married to a liar, a cheat, and a manipulator. I told her I knew everything and I was done playing her game. She cried then, of course. Not because she felt guilty or remorseful, but because her little plan was falling apart. She threw herself on the floor, screaming, calling me all sorts of names. Jealous, insecure, obsessive. She tried to make me feel guilty, like I was the one ruining everything. But I just stared at her, cold and detached. I was done pretending to be the nice guy. I wanted her to see that her actions had consequences, that I wasn't some pushover anymore. I told her to leave. I wanted her out of my life. I didn't care where she went or what she did. I was sick of her lies, her manipulations, and her little games. I told her I'd file for divorce if she didn't leave that night because I wasn't going to let her keep hurting me. She argued, begged, even tried to guilt-trip me, but I stood firm. I knew she'd try to come back, to manipulate her way into my good graces again, but I was done. That night I finally felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't happiness. I was still heartbroken, still angry, but I wasn't a victim anymore. I had taken control. I had faced her lies head-on and made her confront the truth. It was the end of our chapter, but I knew it was also the start of something new, something I could rebuild from the ashes of this betrayal. I realized I'd learned a lot from all this. Trusting blindly only gets you hurt, and sometimes you have to fight to protect yourself. What I wanted most now was peace, and I knew I'd have to work hard to get it. But at least I was finally free from her web of lies and manipulation. That's what mattered most. In the days that followed, things started to settle into a strange new normal. I moved out of the house, found a small apartment nearby, and began piecing my life back together. It wasn't easy. There were mornings I woke up feeling empty, haunted by the memories of her betrayal. But each day I reminded myself why I had to let her go, why I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I started seeing a counselor, not because I was weak, but because I needed someone to help me process all the anger, sadness, and betrayal. It helped, in its own way, to put some perspective on everything. Looking back, I realize I learned some harsh truths about trust and human nature. Lisa was a master manipulator. She knew how to lie, how to hide her true intentions behind a pretty face and a bitchy attitude. She thought she could get away with everything because she was so charming, so convincing. But I see now that her deception was her armor, and it was only a matter of time before it broke. I also learned that revenge isn't about causing pain for pain's sake. It's about reclaiming your dignity, standing your ground, and making sure the person who hurt you understands that they can't walk all over you without consequences. Most importantly, I've come to accept that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. It's easy to stay and fight a losing battle, but true strength is knowing when to cut your losses and move on. There's still pain, sure, and I doubt that feeling will ever fully go away. But I've also gained a kind of clarity, a sense that I don't have to carry her betrayal forever. I've learned to trust myself again, to recognize red flags early, and to never let anyone treat me like I'm less than I am. As I sit here, reflecting on everything, I realize I'm finally starting to feel free. The anger has mellowed into resolve. The sadness has become a lesson. And even though I'm still healing, I know I'll come out of this stronger. Lisa's betrayal was a brutal blow, but it also forced me to confront my own limits and find out what I'm really made of. I don't regret what I went through. It taught me that I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who values me for who I am, not for what they can get behind my back. So, to anyone reading this who's in a similar situation, trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs. And if someone cheats and manipulates you, don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes the biggest act of bravery is simply letting go of what hurts you. Because in the end, your peace and self-respect are worth more than any lie, any betrayal, or any false promise.